back to Beat the Banks podcast. I'm Wade Borth, and today my guest and special friend is David Zapata. Thank you, David, for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Wade.
You bet. Well, today we're going to talk about a common phrase that everybody hears, but let's put a little context around it, right? The idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In the pursuit of happiness, especially in this, depends on when you're listening to this, but we're recording this in the Thanksgiving season, the Christmas season. And so I just thought it was really appropriate that we have that conversation, bringing a little bit of your story back into it, David, because, like I said, when you first came to this country, you were telling me it was right before Thanksgiving and you were so thankful to be in this country. But it also kind of relates back to what John Locke was saying. And John Locke was the guy, let's just give you a little context. He was a philosopher, physician back, I'm guessing about the 1700s. And he had this idea, and the original phrase is life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. It wasn't the pursuit of happiness. And I think they changed it, and we're not talking real estate as property, but property that we can get from the use of our minds and our hands and our ingenuity. And so when we talk about this in the contents of IBC, I'm just going to try and bring all these together just to have the conversation about what does that really mean, pursuit of property. In essence, and if you do it correctly, I think you're going to find a lot of happiness. Not that physical things can bring you happiness, but the pursuit of the use of your knowledge in your hands and your skills to produce something or to own something. I think that's the pursuit of happiness. So that's going to be the context of what we're going to talk about today. So David, I'm going to let you probably just hop in there a little bit just to kind of give your little backstory, not your little backstory, but your backstory about what you told me about coming to this country and being so thankful for being in this country.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful conversation. I'm glad we're having it today because it's very timely, Wade, and I think it's an invitation to reflection more than anything. So my story, I don't think is that relevant, but I do think this time of the year is a great opportunity to us to reflect on, as much as we complain about the banks or financial circumstances around the country, the government spending, the deficit. I mean, if you turn on the TV, that's all you'll hear, right? And it is true. And we need to recognize it. We need to prepare. We need to do things about it from our family, from our businesses, from our community. But there has to be also the recognition that we are very, very lucky. I think about Uncle Warren every time I think of this, winning the ovarian lottery. And as you know, I maybe didn't win the lottery directly from a biological perspective on the ovarian lottery, but I was lucky enough to become an immigrant and a citizen through naturalization in the beautiful United States. Something I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity. The opportunity that has afforded my family and me has been beyond what I could recognize. And it also puts in perspective for me why so many people around the world want to come here.
That's a great point is, why is that? What makes us different than everybody else around the world? That no matter how messed up we think we are, and I think of it as like, do we have a bit of a family dysfunction? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, we are still a family. And then why does everybody want to be part of this? I think that's the real key here. And we have to appreciate that because I think people, myself, we have to remind ourselves on a regular basis, like, man, this is the greatest country in the world. Even though we're dysfunctional sometimes, we're still the greatest country in the world. But what, from somebody that's coming from the outside, what makes it that way?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Like a lot of people internally, Americans born here, may think about it in terms of the institutions, the government, or the institutions that support society as a whole. And I can tell you from personal experience that to me, it's definitely been more about people and the mindset that Americans have about making life in their own terms. That's been the most impactful gift for my life. I think other people, other countries certainly have that same spirit, but their ability to implement and create a world around them is outstandingly particular in the United States. And I think that's probably at its largest form observed in technology. The fact that we have all these corporations that started with a little startup, people having small ideas and eventually making them into incredibly large companies that provide value to the world. We have that we have the largest economy in the world. We have incredible influence in multiple industries, in all industries likely. I think that starts not on an institutional level and not just a government level, but it starts actually from a spirit that probably our founders put in society to think about the idea of that pursuit, having the ability to live life with liberty in the pursuit of property and happiness. in our own terms. So to me, that's I think the at the core of why society in America is so special. And you, Wade, know this very well. You talk to people every day, but it's fascinating to sit down with someone to talk about their business, and eventually the conversation going to their background. Oh, I came from nothing, or I had this difficulty. And it's amazing to meet business owner after business owner that has come from really challenging circumstances. A lot of them immigrants like me,
Yeah.
and today be doing amazing things, not just monetarily and financially, but in terms of impact of how they're serving communities, or how they're lifting other people up in that entrepreneurial journey. So that to me is, again, a blessing just to be surrounded by that type of mindset and mentality.
Yeah. And there's such a powerful message there. And you didn't say it, but this is what I'm hearing you tell me is too, is that it's not the government that leads, that empowers people. It's really people at the base level, making contract with other people and engaging with other people, like-minded people, to either grow a business or to grow commerce, or to find an agreement to solve a problem. It's and that's probably why, from an institutional level, the idea, or from an idea level, that infinite banking is so strong in me. And I know it's so strong in you as well, because
Yeah,
it doesn't come from some, top down. It comes from a bottom up approach, in the
approach.
sense that you and I are going to enter into a contract, David, to solve our problems. And this is done at the you and me level. And this is what Nelson talked about in becoming your own banker, was this, is that, it starts at the you and me level, and it's contract between like-minded people. That was one of his common themes. Whenever you had a discussion with him, I would ask him questions, and he would always bring it back to kind of those core ideas, that, can this be served by you and me? Does it need, some other government to make that happen? And if it did, then it's like, is it really supporting those base ideas that we talk about? And so, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, David, but I just would assume that a lot of people that come to this country look at this and like, oh my gosh, we got a huge opportunity, because we can band together with other like-minded people. And a lot of times it's within their own community.
Hmm.
And not always, but a lot of times that could be the case. And so that's why I think IBC really resonates with people that have these same ideals, or these same thought process that we're talking about here today.
Yeah, and I was sharing with you, I came to the United States for the first time November 20th of 2006. Myself, my brother, and we enter JFK in New York, and we go through the whole immigration waiting line, hours at the airport to complete the first immigration. We go home. We have some family in New York, and life starts in America. And it's certainly a very shocking experience. Not only the language is different, but we've never experienced winter. Go deep into winter. We, culturally, that it's both mind bending and also overwhelming, to be honest with you. And I mentioned this because the week after that was Thanksgiving that year,
Mm,
and we were directly embraced into the American tradition to celebrate with gratitude the things we have in front of us and the community we have around us. And without knowing anyone other than my uncle in New York, we were part of a large celebration full of abundance, weight turkeys and all the Thanksgiving things you can imagine. So you can probably guess that that made a huge impression on me of what was happening,
yeah.
right? People with other people celebrating the blessings they had in front of them, sharing with strangers, quite honestly, in a place where there was abundance. And that abundance was brought by the people that created value in that community, in that family, in that business. And when you were talking about infinite banking and life insurance, every year, I was telling you this, every year I have a reflection time to think back at those days where we were wearing a little fleece in the middle of a New York winter because we didn't know anything about, and how far every year things move forward for my family because of our ability to engage in private contracts with other people at the you and me level and create value that creates growth that makes a better society around us, around our business, and around our community.
Yeah, that's fab. I mean, that's such a powerful story. Just that idea of a coming here knowing nothing besides that, and having a fleece jacket in New York in the wintertime. That's absolutely crazy. But what have you seen, and where have you grown from them? And to the point, if we bring it back to the conversation around infinite banking, a lot of times this podcast we're talking about, why would somebody want to do this? Why would somebody want to go down this idea of talking and thinking about infinite banking? What does that have to do with this idea of being thankful? What does this have to do with your story of being an immigrant and being dependent on other like-minded people, because that's who kind of took you in with it. Hey, I've been in your shoes before. Let's get contract. Let's have and a contract isn't necessarily a piece of paper always. It might just be a contract like, hey, I'm here to help you because somebody helped me,
Yes.
type of thing. And so that's why I think it's so exciting. And then from that, going back to what John Locke says was the pursuit of property. It wasn't the pursuit of real estate that really got you excited, but it was the pursuit of property,
Hmm.
which leads to happiness, right? Which means a fulfillment of your self actualization. If we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So hitting that self actualization of like, hey, I'm striving at my fullest potential. I'm taking my knowledge and my skills and putting them to work the best possible place that I know of that I believe will be successful. Unlike a lot of countries that dictate to you what you have to do with your skills, which is your hard work and also your knowledge and understanding. Again, that belongs to you, and the private property there that we're talking about, or the property is yourself and your skills and your abilities.
Yeah, and honestly, this conversation is going back to that invitation to reflection, right? Like, what are the first principles that we're using to think about things of life? And in this case, we started talking about again the opportunity we have in the United States to pursue these things, to have the ability to have ownership, control, and when we then create a parallel to the infinite banking concept and whole life insurance as a whole, the way that we determine our product or the asset class that we perform the product of infinite banking on, I go back to first principles. Wade, to me that's a very clarifying thought, because unfortunately sometimes the conversation goes into this very specific things and features, and we forget to talk about, hey, what are the values, what are the principles we're engaging with here to make decisions that become self-evident, right?
Yeah,
There's a reason why we want life, liberty, and pursuit of ownership of property. And in this case, when I think about my savings environment, at a minimum, my savings environment, I want to follow principles of good money stewardship, which I think stem from the fact that this asset class is a contract between two parties that are engaging in that same pursuit of liberty, life, and ownership.
yeah.
And there's beauty on that. There's a reason why it stood the test of 200 years through wars, depressions, recessions, and it's still here as an entity, as a contract that we can engage in to have protection and to have the ability to create the, in my opinion, the most optimal savings environment on a private contract.
And you're talking a private contract with an insurance company, a mutual insurance company that's ran for our
Correct.
benefit, right? So
Correct.
I think there's some real, man, there's some power there, what you're saying, because most people look at life insurance and they go, oh, life insurance company, and they have really a negative connotation. But if they understood the simplicity and beauty of what a life insurance contract is, not kind of what the entertainment industry has painted it as, and rightfully so, maybe it gets some of the reputation it deserves. But a mutual insurance company at its base core is just that. It's a contract between you, which is you and me,
Yeah.
because we're both owners of a policy at this company. And then they have to take some of these base ideas, these base benefits that we talk about, that roll right back in here, right? So part of that is the privacy issue, right? So they have this idea that it's a contract. It is a private contract between you and I,
Yes.
and really nobody else has to be invited to that contract
Yes.
unless we want to divulge that.
Yeah.
That's huge. That doesn't happen anywhere else.
And to put in perspective for whoever needs to hear this, like I come across, Wade, and I'm sure you do too, many people that in portions of their financial life go to extreme levels of effort to create privacy around their assets. They may create complex entity structures for their properties or business. They will have trusts and lawyers creating a significant amount of effort and quite honestly noise to be able to protect things. And then when they look at whole life insurance, because they cannot see it for what it truly is, they're confused and they may dismiss it,
Yeah,
but it's exactly rooted in the same principles they're trying to implement in other parts of their life. In this case, we're talking about privacy, but I think that's true for that and many of the other features or reasons why we engage with this contract.
yeah, yeah. That's so true. It's you just do a really nice job of articulating that thought there.
Yeah.
One of the other things I was thinking about as you were saying that is, I can see you having Thanksgiving dinner with people you barely knew.
Hmm.
And again, that was a contract that you had with them. They invited you in, you accepted, you came in, you enjoyed their hospitality. But think about that from what life insurance does too, David. Life
Hmm.
insurance does the same thing, except for they don't provide you turkey, mashed potatoes. They provide you and your family with protection and death benefit
Yeah.
and access to cash.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an incredible gift. Again, the moment you start making the parallels from a values perspective, it is such a self-evident realization for me that for most families in America, if not all, for most businesses in America, if not all, this avenue to store money at a minimum a savings environment is such an American values based solution from a private perspective available to every one of us in this country. And that's why one of the reasons, again, we won the ovarian lottery. We just need to uncover, unfold the truth about what this is in our conversation, open our minds to the fact that perhaps the way we've been looking at the asset class, the way that we've been thinking about it is inaccurate at a minimum. And
Yep.
there's more behind the curtains that we can see. Again, there's a reason why banks are the largest purchasers of this asset class. There's a reason why all these corporations use this asset class for their core capital. There's a reason why family offices, wealthy families use it. So at the you and me level, real normal Americans, there's a solution available for some of the problems, like you mentioned, to have proper protection among private parties and access to cash.
Access to cash, guaranteed access to cash. I think that's the other part of the conversation is, you came to this country with a lot of uncertainty.
Hmm.
What this does, it provides people that voluntarily buy a policy. And again, the thing that's really key to understand that you're voluntarily joining an organization that's accepting us and we're joining them. And then once you have that acceptance into the organization, now you have access to cash, guaranteed access to cash. And so going back to, just like I said, with when you guys came to the country, there's so much uncertainty. What would a little bit of certainty done for you at that moment? And maybe the certainty you had was, man, we're getting a meal today. We're getting sitting down with somebody for Thanksgiving. That brought enough certainty to your mom and your dad, right? They were both there
Mhm.
at the same time, or was it just your mom?
Just my dad. My mom
Just
had
your dad.
already passed. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So just, brought the certainty to your dad. And the more certainty he had, the more ability he was to go do things that maybe were a little bit uncertain.
Yeah, let's speak to that because I bet there's people hearing this that will quickly relate to this. Like a lot of this conversation also, Wait, does not show up in a financial statement or a balance sheet.
No.
It's so hard sometimes to get people to hear this, but I really mean, from the bottom of my heart, open your mind to the fact that a lot of the financial conversations you may be having at home with your business partners have nothing to do with numbers on a ledger. Sometimes disconnections are how money and how the relationship with money is affecting your ability to be healthy or your ability to have your spiritual clarity or your relationships with your family, with your community, with your business partners. And that may have a larger price and a decrease in value much bigger than what you can see on a balance sheet. I don't even think about me, to be honest, because I was a 20-year-old. I never worked before. That's not something we do in Colombia culturally to work when we were in school. I think about my dad. I cannot imagine the stress my dad was under at that time. And a little bit of certainty would have probably put him in a place from a mental health perspective that would have probably been more enjoyable to come and experience the whole immigration process. I cannot imagine my dad with a 20-year-old and a 13-year-old boy, my little brother, coming into a country, not having a job secure, not knowing how culturally and economically the country works. I remember so vividly, Wade, going into a Chase branch. That's why I have such a passionate relationship with Chase and Jamie Dimon because it's been a continuum through my entire American experience. And we went and opened a debit card. We had no social security. So, like, it's like coming into a world where you don't know how to navigate. And every single step that most Americans see as trivial is very complicated for a new person in this culture. The moment we wanted to access credit, they said no. Why? Because we didn't have credit history. Well, how do you create a credit history if you don't have access to credit? The chicken and the egg. So it took me months to figure this out, right? Things that, again, we take for granted when we're here for a long time. That conversation seems trivial now. So I think about all that, and I think back to, okay, now as a parent in my late 30s, I cannot put items on my balance sheet, Wade, when I think about the confidence I feel that I'll be able to provide for opportunities for my children when the time comes when they want higher education, if they do, or they want to open a business, or because I'm introducing more and more and more certainty in my life that continues to grow as a base foundation for my financial life, that is making me a more confident parent, a more confident provider for my family, a more confident advisor, quite honestly. I am not speaking to people about this from a place of theory. I am a man in the arena with them. So when I tell them what it's doing for my life, and when I advise people on why I think they should introduce at least a portion of their assets to the certainty of whole life, I'm speaking from a place that I'm leaving those benefits that, again, are not on a balance sheet. They are internal to my spiritual life, my personal life, my mental health, my family relationships. And that is very, very powerful.
It is so powerful. I mean, that certainty really allows you to pursue your dreams as well.
Yeah.
So, like you said, it's not on a balance sheet because a balance sheet is just numbers. Numbers don't, tuck you in at night, and numbers don't hug you, right? That's
Yes.
it's a certainty, and that certainty, and from a business perspective, even I think about those in the past that had the certainty of having this asset class that we talk about, and they were able to pursue their dreams, able to fulfill what they saw is their passion and their desires in life, right? And there's history has, Ray Kroc is one we talk about a lot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How did he get started with McDonald's? I mean, does anybody not hear about McDonald's? I mean, you go to every country in the world, you hear about McDonald's.
Yes.
That happened because he had certainty. He had cash value in his life insurance policy, and he was able to access guaranteed access of that money to allow him to pursue his dream and his
Yeah.
passion. And if you haven't watched the movie, it's a great movie as well because it talks about, man, there's a lot of uncertainty in this guy's life, and he had a dream that nobody else believed him except for himself,
Yeah.
and he has to have access to cash to make it happen.
Yeah, and honestly, in our community, we don't need to go that far. Like, I didn't get a chance to meet Nelson like you did, but I've consumed hours of his content and his teachings, and quite honestly, one of the emotional things that I connected the most with him. You have to think, I'm a Colombian race, South American. Like the Mississippi culture of a 70 or 80-year-old is not something easy to relate to for me. But I often imagine Nelson when he talks about kneeling in his bed, praying to God for a solution under the stress he was under with his estate portfolio, under stress, under difficulty financially, his granddaughter battling cancer, like all these things that came crashing on him. I would be a betting man. If I was a betting man, I would say that his financial statement was probably at the bottom of the things that he was really wrestling with emotionally, spiritually, family wise. And for him to stand in the clarity, and I have no doubt this is a God given thought, that his ownership of a life insurance policy on a relationship where he had a private contract with this insurance company allowed him to find a solution to fund the steps that he needed to take to get out of that situation. Is the most relatable example to what I'm trying to communicate here, which is sometimes the relationship with money has nothing to do with money, and it just provides the funding and the solution to, and then to make the connection with the quote that you mentioned, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of ownership. It's funny that he put it in that order because when I think about it, the reverse order makes sense as a pattern to me. I stand on the ownership of private property, in this case, a life insurance contract, for what you said, control and access to cash, in order to have the freedom, the liberty to make choices in my life, in order to live the life that I truly want to live, you know. And this definitely connects again with our 5 areas conversation, which we've brought up many times. But at the tippy toe of that sequence, the level of abundance that I want to express in my life is a direct consequence to how well my foundation is based on ownership of property, in this case, whole life for us. But there's again no doubt in my mind that those three things as an American value have been one of the most dominating forces, at least for my life, in appreciating how lucky we are to have the opportunity to be in America, and Along with that, the responsibility we have to take advantage of that opportunity to put more value out there for ourselves, our family, and quite honestly, wait for every other American around us.
That's so true. It's, I mean, I see it as my responsibility, my passion to teach and to, have expose this to as many people as that want to hear it.
Yeah.
Because not everybody wants to hear it, quite frankly. And I imagine if you listen to the podcast, you're like, what are these guys talking about? I want to know more. But, that idea of, hey, let's expose you to a different way of thinking that really isn't different. That's the fun part about it is, Nelson talked about this. And to your point, when he was on his knees praying, he was looking for a way out. The way was already there. It was already there. So it didn't have to be created. It was
Mhm.
already in place.
Yeah.
And so, this idea of something new, it's nothing new at all. It's just, it's been around for, you know, well, really since John Locke was talking about it in the 1700s.
Yeah.
And the property that we're talking about is just a piece of private property, which we call properly structured whole life insurance.
Yeah.
And this is the beauty of it. It's like, okay, so we have this piece of property which can lead us to many different things. And so one of my passions is to teach people how this leads to, you know, abundance in their life, abundance in their liberty.
Yeah.
And so you think about life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, and I see it as a triangle. Because where's the stop and where's the start? You really don't know. Because if you
Mhm.
have life and you have liberty, you can pursue property, and if you have private property, you can find abundance in your life and abundance of liberty.
It's a
So
constantly expanding unfolding of that vision of whatever that looks like, right? No, in no point we're talking about how you should live your life or what it should look like.
no,
It is actually your privilege and your responsibility to define that at
yeah,
whatever scale you want, which is again the beauty of being in a place where we can express those things regardless of what you think of what's happening with the government, with the dollar. All those conversations are real or true. We need to face them as Americans. But still, even under that circumstance, on a relative basis, go pick a place where you can express the way we can the desires you want to create abundance for your life. And it's very difficult to challenge that expression, in my opinion, compared to the United States. I mean, there's a reason why people cross. I don't know if you know this. People are walking across something they call the Darien Gap in Panama. They cross through the jungle. Through the jungle, there's violence. There's all kinds of threats. People carrying their children by foot. This jungle to walk across Central America to get to the border and try to climb asylum. I don't know many places in the world where people are doing this, pursuing the opportunity
yeah,
to be in our country. So there is a significant, again, amount of gratitude to be had and responsibility for all of us to really maximize the potential we have to create value through that opportunity. And one thing that I was going to mention that I thought about when I heard you talk, Wade, every time you hear someone talk about whole life, oh, it's expensive to own, the worst investment, blah, 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 the insurance company. I hear this often now. The insurance companies are so greedy, Wade. They're keeping all your money. When you die, they only give you the death benefit. They keep the cash value. Like they start spewing all these half truths. Just contrast the conversation we had today about values, about American founding perspectives and ideas, how that matches a private contract that is, like you said, written in your benefit for the owner. In this case, you're the owner, and contrast that opinion they're giving you and then the recommendations they're making. Oh, go work with XYZ in Wall Street, or go do this instead, and see if those other alternative solutions for your savings actually have your best interest in mind and are actually based on capitalistic ideas that benefit everyone. I think you will probably start to think more clearly when you make that analysis.
yeah. I would. It's so true, David. I go back and just ask one question: who's in control?
Mhm.
The
Yes.
further the control gets away from you, then who's the one that's telling you what to do, right? So, our founding principles, what we believe in, and obviously with Nelson's like, it's all about you being in control. I've heard you say this before: is you want to be the director of your own movie. I don't
Mhm.
want to take Wade Borth and replace Wade or Wells Fargo with Wade Borth being your banker. I want to empower you to become, because that's the words that you use in the word in Nelson's book, becoming your own banker.
Yeah.
And banker, people see that as just as a financial thought process when it's really more than that.
Yeah.
It's a philosophical thought process of who's in control of your movie. And
Yes.
if you control the dollars, then you can go and control all those other things.
Yeah, you
Um,
have a really healthy perspective on this, which is if you start to think about the word banker as an activity, as a verb, and the verb relates to managing the inventory of dollars flowing through your life, you'll stop thinking about the building on 123 Park Avenue in New York City, and you'll start thinking about your own self being the steward, the manager of that inventory of dollars that will flow through your family, through your business. Again, the opportunity and the responsibility that that represents in your life.
yeah, yeah. And that's really what we're talking about is that abundance all starts from the financial side and controlling that financial side and being in it along with that opportunity to control that financial side comes a tremendous responsibility.
Mhm.
But I was just reading some stuff on John Locke before that, and I didn't see any place where he says that it's incumbent upon us to give up responsibility. Quite frankly, it's we should be more responsible for what we do,
Yes.
and that's kind of where where we started this conversation. So, David, I'm going to thank you. We could go really deep into this, but I'm going to go back and say life, liberty, and the pursuit of property is, and property not being real estate, but although we love real estate, property is the culmination of our skills and our abilities and what we can do with those skills and abilities. And that pursuit is using that to the maximum potential. So if you're listening to this, we have a lot of content on factandfinancial.com where I'd encourage you to go watch some videos. Go watch this idea of abundance in our 5 areas of life where we want abundance, not just in the financial side of it, but all areas. Because if you're not doing that, you're not finding true life. And so, again, we take a different approach. And again, Fact and Financial, we get a lot of resources, a lot of videos. But this podcast, share with others that are like minded, because that's really what you want to do. Is you want to get in contract with like minded individuals. Dave and I are like minded. We get into a lot of contracts. Nothing written by an attorney, but written by our word and our handshake.
Yes.
And that's what really starts at the very base you and me level. So again, thank you, David, for being on the podcast today. I'm excited about this message because this message isn't, like you said, isn't balance sheet driven.
Mhm.
It's much higher level than that. So
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
thanks so much.